Sign language is the only silent language known to man. Although spoken using your hands instead of your mouth, sign language is still a beautiful and intellectual language. Having previously taken a sign language course, I was exposed to the beautiful nature and culture of the language. Listening to my speech will allow you to take a silent step into the world of deaf people, and will show you why I truly find this language extremely fascinating. Today, with my audience of my brother and my mom, I will be discussing the history and culture of sign language, along with my personal experiences of it. Although it may seem like a universal language, sign language has many different types based on the location that you're in. Today I will be narrowing in on the American Sign Language aspect. It all began when a man named Thomas Gallaudet wanted to bring the gospel to the deaf in order to save their souls. Being there was no deaf school in America, Gallaudet set out to establish one. He traveled all the way to France to find Laurent Clerc, who was a French deaf educator. He brought Clerc back to America to bring sign language to America. On their travels back home, Gallaudet taught Clerc English and Clerc taught Gallaudet French Sign Language. Over the years, American Sign Language developed from the French aspect of it to be its own type. The creation of the first deaf school was in 1864, when Abraham Lincoln signed a law which established the first college for the deaf, known as Gallaudet University. Gallaudet and Clerc were both professors in the college, being extremely proud of what they had accomplished. Now, the evil villain in all history stories for this one is Alexander Graham Bell. He became part of the oralist movement, which sought to ban ASL. He thought that it was disconnecting deaf people from hearing. He thought that they should only communicate via lip reading. So he did not want ASL being taught in schools, and he did not want it being practiced on the streets. He also believed in breeding, which kept all deaf people apart from each other, so they could only reproduce with hearing people, because he believed that this would reduce the amount of deaf people in America. Many other things did occur in deaf history, but one of the most important was the Deaf President Now movement. There was 3 candidates, 2 deaf and 1 hearing, for the president of the Gallaudet University. Now, the only hearing one was chosen to become the president. The students of Gallaudet were furious, but began a peaceful and forceful protest, which ended in the hearing president resigning and the first deaf president to be elected. This was very important to the students of Gallaudet University, but also important to America as a whole. This movement helped pave the way for the Americans with Disabilities Act, which was signed in 1988. The culture of deaf people is very different from American culture. Deaf people do not like to be classified as disabled. They are just simply members of a group who share a common language and a defined set of values. They tend to be very more blunt than hearing people are, and more in your face about things, because there is no such thing as being rude in deaf culture. They just say it how it is, and no one gets offended or anything, because that's how deaf people are raised. There's clubs and different bars and such for deaf people specifically to go to, so they can act how they want with each other, and everyone there acts the same and is very pleased. If you do go to a deaf club, though, bring earplugs, because you will go deaf. Deaf people hear music through vibrations in the room instead of hearing it the way that we do. So the music is extremely loud. My personal experiences with sign language have made me really love the language. During my class that I just ended 2 weeks ago, we were able to watch many informative videos which taught us the whole history and culture of the language. We also watched videos that allowed us to observe deaf people talking to each other and acting the way that normal deaf people do act. And we also got to view comedy videos and see how deaf people basically do comedy. And it's really interesting because if you're not deaf or you don't put yourself in the mindset of a deaf person, you won't exactly understand the jokes. But we did in class because we allowed ourselves to be looking that certain way as deaf people do. Being able to learn the language through books and practice made me be able to have very simple conversations in sign language. Now, I work at Walgreens, the local one in town, and next to it is a Goodwill where 3 deaf men work. They always come into Walgreens to buy snacks and drinks on their break and have never been able to talk to anyone before. The first time I helped them, I just talked normally as I would when checking someone out and didn't realize that they were deaf. At the end of the transaction, I realized that the man was not talking back to me at all. And he just looked at me and he just pointed to his ear and shook his head. So I took that as he was deaf. And I felt so embarrassed that I was sitting there talking to someone who couldn't even hear me. And I didn't want him to think that I was degrading him at all by talking. Lo and behold, he didn't care. I'm sure he gets it, maybe often. And like I said, there's no being rude in deaf culture. But after taking the sign language class and being able to have conversations with these 3 men, I can really tell that they come into Walgreens more often and they really enjoy actually being able to conversate with someone. The first time I ever said anything, I didn't tell them I knew sign language. I just looked at the man and I was like, "Hi, how are you?" And his face lit up so brightly and he told me that he was fine. I felt so happy and I knew that he was mutually happy as well. Now, whenever they come in, they always look for me. We have a short conversation about how our day has been, or I told them that last week I traveled to the Niagara Falls and that it was a very beautiful place and it made me feel very happy. And he told me that he has always been wanting to go there and that he thought it was a very beautiful place as well. So being able to finally conversate with someone in a specific way towards them, I can really tell how this has both made us connect more and how they want to come in to Walgreens more, because now that they can shop and talk to people, they ask me where things are now and they ask me how I am, everything. It's very good customer service and I'm very proud that that I have the capability of speaking to someone like this. Now today we explored the amazingly beautiful language of sign and discussed the culture and history and how it affects different people when you're actually able to speak with them. There are many different ways to communicate, but I find sign language to be one of my favorite ones so far. And I hope if you ever get the chance to take a sign language class, do it. It is beautiful. Thanks for watching.